Beat Lamar! Beat Lamar! One of our great leaders who gave the prayer earlier, Mr. Lee Douglas, has been leading the Liberty Movement and the Tea Party movement and the 9/12 movement for many, many, many years. He is an icon and a guy that all of us look up to, and we thank you, Lee Douglas, so much for all the work that you've done. Folks, Lee Douglas, 9/12 Project founder of Tennessee.
This is can you hear me okay? An exceptional crowd. Almost all of our events, 9/12 events, have more women than men. And we have a good time. So if you're not a 9/12 member, I suggest that you sign up. In each county, we've got a 9/12 leadership group. One time, I live in Williamson County, and I was going to meet with the three women who are our leaders there, and we were supposed to meet at 5 o'clock at a nice restaurant. And unlike my usual routine, I was early. And in Williamson County, we only have beautiful women, and our leaders happen to be very attractive also. And because I was there early, I asked the hostess for a booth, and as she was seating me, I stopped her and I said, "I hear this is a good place to pick up chicks." And she didn't know what to say. And I took my seat, and she went off that way. Pretty soon, my three leaders came in and sat down with me. So you can imagine the look on her face when she came back and saw me with three chicks there. So, men, 9/12 is a good place. I'd like to tell you some of the things that I've learned since 9/12 started. I asked my son today, he's 16, what he's learned since 9/12 started, and his answer was, if you're not part of the solution, you're the problem. And that's true. I learned in walking the streets for some candidates who I supported that if you see a house with a flag, there's no progressive Democrat living in that house. You can be sure. Try it. Some of you are nodding your head. Yes, that's the truth. Another thing that I learned is that the people like you and in 9/12, not exclusively, but almost completely, the people in 9/12 who say the Constitution is dead, it's not living, it means what it says, also happen to be the same people who say the Scriptures mean what they say. It's not subject to your interpretation. They believe that there was a historical Jesus, a historical Isaiah and Jeremiah, and they don't have any trouble saying there was a Noah. So I find a correlation in the outlook of people who are my friends, my fellow political friends, that they believe the Constitution means what it says. They happen to also be people who believe the Scriptures mean what they say. They don't have trouble with absolutes, or as I would call them, literalist. And some of you have been interviewed by a guy who's a Yale law student. He's now just gone back to finish his third year. He's been producing a documentary. He feels like we got the shaft, guys, by the media. I don't know if you agree with that. I did. And he agreed to an interview by me, and I was asking him his view on the amendments, and he said that when it came to the Second Amendment, that there are exceptions, like some of our Supreme Court members believe. And I asked him, well, if the founders said the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and it meant no infringement, how could they have said it differently if they meant exactly what the word said? And he couldn't answer that. And then he changed his mind and he said that he could, but it would take 2,000 pages to answer it. So, you see, the people who are lacking in absolutes or don't have any sort of a foundation are lost. They blow with the wind, and they change their position as their politics force them to change it. I've noticed something in Washington, and I've noticed something here in Tennessee. I don't know about you. Are you angry? I'm an angry white man. I don't know why we have a supermajority in our legislatures here in Tennessee, and we can't pass simple legislation like equal rights. We provide special privileges for black people by affirmative action. That is wrong. And with a supermajority, you would think that our legislators would pass that easily. And I was at the Statesman banquet the other night, the guest of my congressman, and they repeated up on the stage so often how we're a supermajority. It's confusing how we're a supermajority and we can't get anything done. Now, how does that link to Lamar? I find who said that? I find that people like you are extremists. You've been called extremists. I know I have. Let's hear it for extremists. And as extremists, you have to accept sometimes your position is 100% correct. You don't need to fudge. You don't need to be embarrassed. You need to stand there with your feet planted and say, call me whatever you want, but the truth is, this is 100% right. The person in my lifetime who was best at doing that was a guy named Ronald Reagan. And he wouldn't flinch. Now, we've elected someone named Lamar Alexander to represent us. And I'll tell you what he's like. But let's not do it in the context of here in the United States Senate. Let's do it in the context of, say, a Middle Eastern country where you might have a Muslim population that has the Wahhabis and the Sufis. The Wahhabis, they want to kill every gay person and every Jew. The Sufis, they don't. So, if they were in Congress, one was a Democrat, the other's a Republican, they've got a problem. So what do? They compromise. They kill every other Jew and every other gay person, or they kill all the Jews and leave the gays alone, or they just kill the gay Jews. That's compromise. So instead of, for example, creating sovereignty and closing our border, they let certain people in with certain privileges. Lamar Alexander is his name, who has voted for this bill. Do you know, if you forge a passport, you go to jail, right? Do you know, in this bill, what's the number? 744. What? 744. I want Lamar Alexander to remember 744 for the rest of his life. That is the signature that's going to take him down. 744. In that bill, if you are an illegal and you get caught and you have forged 2 passports, you get out of jail free. If you forge 3 of them, you're in trouble. So what's the equity in that? Why have you become a secondary citizen and the illegal is primary ahead of you? Do you know that if you employers, if you have someone in your employee who's just a regular citizen, by law, now with Obamacare in place, you have to provide insurance for them. Let's suppose it costs you $12,000 a year. 744 says if you hire someone to take that person's place who has come here illegally and has gotten amnesty, you don't have to provide insurance for them. Do you know what that does? If you're that employee, you may be saying bye-bye because you can lose your job. Employers are in business to make money. And if they can make money by letting some people go and bringing others in, some of them are forced to do that. And Lamar Alexander is one of those people who signed off on that bill. Lamar Alexander is the guy who, if you and I are extremists, and we say there's a chasm there, we need to build a 100-foot bridge across it, and the other extremists, who make more sense than those who are in the middle, they'll say, no, we don't need a bridge. Lamar Alexander will say, well, let's build half of a bridge. We'll just go 100 feet out over the chasm. And then everybody's happy. The reason that I didn't let my son play with Pokemon is because, I don't know if you parents know who Pokemon is. He's a fictional character, but with him, you never knew who was the good guy or who was the bad guy. And I didn't want my son to be confused about who's good and who's bad. It's not that hard. And political correctness is another name for that. And as a result, we have school boards who won't take a position about Israel or Islam. And we all know it's not that confusing. So we're here because Lamar Alexander has betrayed us. He has tricked us, and he has confused the low information voter. But it's stopped. And America and the world needs what you're doing here. It begins with what you're doing. And I thank God for you for being here. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Lee Douglas.